Okay. Let's start slowly. The two mitzvahs here, I just wonder how we're going to get through both of them, but okay. Reish Ches. I think that Reish Ches is at the end of a set of mitzvahs which I think, have to do with Milas Chesed, and somehow afterwards is all the mitzvahs of Chassanas, and somehow Rabbi has to, or Chochem has to do with this. We'll see exactly the Seder over here, but here, let's see Reish Ches. HaMitzvah Ashmona Mosayim. He shetzivonu letzadek apeles v'amoznayim, the various instruments to weigh, v'amishkolos, and the weights themselves, v'hamidos, and the midos of both of dry and of fluid midos, ulahaflig b'tzimsumom, and to be very careful about to be exact. So even before we get to what the translation is over here, what the translation is proper, reading it, you get the impression there are two separate things going on over here. There's something called the tzaddik and lahaflig. Okay, Kapach translates it. There's no pelis there. Mishkoles v'amoznayim v'amidos. And instead of lahaflig, it's ulahakbid b'diukom, and to be makbid about their exactitude. Now, so there are two parts of this mitzvah. There's letzadek and lahakpir or lahaflik b'diukom, whatever that means. And you get the same impression in Mishnah Torah, in Hilchos Geneva, in Periches Halacha Aleph, Mitzvas Aseh letzadek hamoznayim v'amishkolos v'amidos yofe uledaktek b'cheshbonon b'shas hasiyason. Here he adds b'shas hasiyason shenei mamoiznei tzedek avnei tzedek v'hin tzedek yeh lochem. So, l'cheir, what it means, at the end, ulahaflik b'tzimsumum, or ladayek, or lahakbid b'diukom, is the Ram says, the asir, lois Mishnah Torah, and let's, for argument's sake, assume he's doing the same thing over here. But then, letzadek means to make sure that they are maintained in this diuk. So there's one, to make them b'diuk, and to make sure that they continue to be like that. At least that's what he's doing in Mishnah Torah. Over here, he's using the same verb, the same discussions, but the same two things, but he doesn't tell you what it is. And let's assume they're the same, but it's not muchach. Now, let's keep in mind, before we see the Sefer, that the pasuk that the Ram quotes, "V'amroi yis'aleh" in Kedoshim, "Moiznei tzedek, avnei tzedek, efas tzedek, v'hin tzedek yeh lochem." So, l'chor, reading it, tzedek is an adjective describing the moznayim, describing the avonim, and describing the midah of ephah, and describing the midah of hin. And then l'chayr zitzivui say yiyeh lochem. Okay, but that's not what the Rambam seems to be saying, because he says letzadek hapeles. So it means tzedek is not an adjective, but it's a verb. Letzadek hapeles va'moznayim va'mishkolos va'midos ulahakpir ulahaflik b'tzimtzumum b'diukom. So l'chayr, this all comes from the Sefer. V'loshoin Sefer moznei tzedek tzadek es hamoznayim yofe. There are two texts here. One of the Kisriyat say yofe yofe, and the other one says yofe. So since Ibn Tibbon had yofe, I left it the way it was. But it took Kisriyat. But whatever it is, yofe. So it's tzadek. So avnei tzedek, tzadek es hamishkolos yofe. Efa tzedek, tzadek es efa yofe. V'hin tzedek, tzadek v'hin yofe. So a priori, I would have interpreted that the tzedek and the yofe are really two things which are one. Tzaddik es moznayim yofe. It should be made to be, it's to be lahaflig b'tzimtzumah. But then I'm confused in Ram over here that there's the two things. Tzaddik hapeles ulahaflig b'tzimtzumah. That's yofe yofe. So I'm not sure l'chayr the yofe is going on the tzaddik. It modifies tzaddik, so I'm not sure what happens over here. In Protei HaMitzvos, see in Minyan HaKotzer, he says the tzaddik moznayim im mishkolos. So that the mitzvah is tzaddik, that's clear. Okay, so tzaddik, which is an adjective, the Pirush Makubal says that it's a verb, or tzivui. And the Minyan HaKotzer, the tzaddik moznayim mishkolos, shel moznei tzedek, shenema moznei tzedek, avnei tzedek. In the Protei Mitzvos, the tzaddik hamoznayim im mishkolos. So all I could imagine telling you in Minyan HaKotzer and Protei Mitzvos, I don't know how much you can medayik, because he usually is makatzer. You could have imagined that the mitzvah is the tzaddik and yofe is a shurim in the tzaddik, which I would have interpreted like that also. What he does over here, and in the halachas, the Mishnah Torah proper, that there are two things, and that the yofe and that the lahakbet is b'tzimtzumum is b'shas hasiyasan, and the tzaddik, I guess in general, I'm a little bit confused how you do that. Now, but l'chei, what the Ram is mechadish, that there are two dinim, that the Aseh has to be b'diuk, and is a din of kiyum midas midiyokos. The Ram is geneva in Periches alocha yutches hasito in mekaneich es midos of achas l'shloishim yoim. He has to rub it and carefully examine it and make sure, I assume, ubal, to make sure something that's okay. Ubal abayis achas l'shnei mosa chodesh. V'chedvonim mikanech midosav pa'amim b'shab, pamayim b'shabbos, twice a week. U'mimache mishkalois pam b'shabbos. U'mikaneach moznaim al kol mishkol u'mishkol kedei shelachlidu. That shouldn't get rusty, and by getting rusty, the midah will change. So there's not only a din to make the midas in the proper, to be exact, but also to make sure that the maintenance that they're exact. And l'chera, the makor for the Rambam is a Sifri, which we'll see in Mirz Hashem, that learns from Yiyeh. So the Yiyeh is the maintenance, and but then it becomes strange. If the Yiyeh is the maintenance, then the Tzaddik is the Aseh. I'm not sure exactly how that works in Mishnah Torah. Bishkodes midas yofa yofa, uledaktik bishcheshboinon b'shas asiyosam. But we'll see the Sifri and we'll decide ourselves. What happens is l'chera that the mitzvah is to watch that the midos are continue to be the proper weight, and l'chera is a kumvasei, and he has to constantly look for methods and strategies that they should remain exact. And now let me read the Sifri. The Sifri in Parshas Kiseitze, Yiyeh Minei agronomus al kach mikan omu hasita mekaneach midoisov achas l'shloshim yoim ubal abayis achas l'shnei mosa chodesh. So l'chera, this second din in the Rambam to constantly make sure that the midas are proper is learned out from Yiyeh, and it's a Sifri. So I would have said that the tzaddik is b'shas asiyosam, and the Yiyeh is that they should be maintained in that fashion. So the Rambam in Perich Halacha Aleph is difficult because he says that he said tzaddik es amidas yofe yofe uledaktik b'cheshbonon b'shas asiyosam. So the diuk is not the tzaddik. So I'm very confused because the Ram seems to be quoting both halachas, and it's Sifra and Sifri, wants some tzaddik and wants some Yiyeh, and that's what it would have done. How he does it in Mishnah Torah I don't get, but over here it certainly could be like that. So what we have here, see, this is just the beginning. I'm just setting up the postulates, and things become more interesting as we go on. Now, the question is, so l'chayr there's a kiyum aseh in diuk asiyosam and shmira al kiyumam. And the question is, maybe there's also an Isa Aseh by Gram Hafchasasam and make them be Goyrem that they become inaccurate. There's a Rambam in Hilchos Geneva, Perich Ches Halacha Zayin. Ein Toimnes and Mishkoles b'melech kedei sheyifchesu. It's only a gram. I put it in salt, and they somehow change the midah. The Ram says it's yifchesu. Okay. Well, yatichu b'midas halach b'eis shemoidei, because that would also change the midah. Afilu oisa hamida ketana b'yoisa sh'ayatoik pido al midas b'cholshu shneim mesua v'hi midah ketana echad b'shloisha u'shloishim b'lug. So that's one case. The question is, that's where I do something to be goyrem that should be poiches. Where would you place if I make a midah, which by definition, the way I made it, through time, it will become less. But now it's perfect. Is that a problem in the asiyah? Or that's a problem in the shmira and the kiyum? The Rambam says like this in Perich Ches of Hilchos Geneva Halacha Daled: Ein oisim mishkolos lo shel bdil, v'lo shel oiferes, v'lo shel shar minei matches. Ke'elu, like them, shar minei matches ke'elu, mipnei shemailin chaluda u'mischaschin. They get rusty and they become less. And the Pashas Lashon Rambam is mashma that the Etzem Asiyah is also. So the two dinim have to make a midah, which is going to be oimed, and that's a part of the dinah of Asiyah. And then I have to be oimed al mishmor to make sure that it maintains the proper weight or midah. And I certainly would have said like that, because you recall, we had a discussion recently. Is there a shev al taseh? I wanted to suggest a shev al taseh that could be a bittul kiyum aseh, but an isa aseh has to be kum vaseh. So if you're going to tell me that the isa is making of tin, because it's going to get rusty, is not with the asiyah, but it's a meshach hazman, then you're saying it's an isa, which is sheva al tasa, and I'm not sure there's such a thing. But first of all, the lashon is mashma like that, and second of all, I would like to maintain that because I believe that isuri aseh of a kum vaseh. You can only imagine a bitul kiyum aseh b'sheva al tasa. So, I'm not getting involved with being out of the sukkah, but, you call it the chasrina, but it's not so clear that there's an isa say of eating outside the sukkah. It just might be a bittul mitzvah, but let's not get involved in that now. Now is the more important thing. We were talking about until this point of an isa, of a mitzvah, of a kiyum mitzvah, or mitzvah say to make midas b'diukom, and tzaddik and yiyah, and that you should maintain the diuk. But there's also a lois aseh of making midas sheirin nechonos. Listen to this. There's one Aseh, first of all, of Mechira with a Mishkolis She'eino Nechina. And there's also, together with the Mechira, with the Aschora of Midas, there's also an Aschora of Geneva. And similarly, there's an Isa Kiyu Mishkolis, not only selling with it, but having it. These two Isuim you find in Hilchos Geneva in a different Perek Zayin of Hilchos Geneva. Halacha Aleph through Gimel. Hashokel lechaveil mishkolis chaserois min hamishkol sheeskimu lo bnei Adam bnei Yosef Medina oish amoided b'mida chasera min hamida sheeskimu lo. It is a convention of bnei Adam, and you use a different midah. Harizeh oiva b'lo isase shenema lo isase over b'mishpot. Bamida, Bamishko, Bamsula. Afalpi, Shahamoy, Dedo, Ashoikel, Choser, Goinev. V'chulei, Kol Mishemashe, Bebesa, Oiva, Chanusai, Mida Chasero, Mishko Chasero, Oiva, Belisas, Nemolo, Yia, Locho, Bekischa. So the two Isuim, and someone who uses these midas, besides the lav of loisasa ovo b'mishpa b'midah b'misuah, there's also a lav of geneva. So I think it's a double portion that the Aseh and the loisasa are chalukim b'yetzi b'sei dina. The Lois Aseh is a midah she'eino nechina, and by using it, I'm stealing from the person, or I can't be mekayim a midah she'eino. It's clear that the midah is not the proper midah. The Aseh is to medayek that the midah should be betachas adiyuk. So if I sell with a midah which is not betachas adiyuk, it's not a midah choser. I don't violate the lois aseh. I'm not a gainev, but I'm not a lamed vovnik. And I think what happens is this is the end of the mitzvahs of chesed. V'after leach k'moicha, v'after mesager. And midas tzaddik hin tzedek, to be medayik in the midas is also a chesed. It's not a geneva. Ches is chesed and the aseh, and perek zayin is midas she'eino nechinos chseros, and it's to us holis. Now, I just want to tell you, this is what I would have assumed, and this is why the Ram puts in the Seder. It's chesed or derech nechina l'snaigim b'nei briyos. However, the chinuch is not like this. In Sefer Chinuch, he says, in Mitzvah Reish Nun Tes, v'oiva aleha bitel aseh muvad sha'ova alav do'ino ugzeil ugneva im yesh bo shava. So over here, that's a chiddush. The Rambam mentions Geneva and Perek Zayin, and the Chinuch seems to assume that there's Geneva and Gzelo Ino if you're not Mekayim the Mitzvah, which is a Chiddush Nifla. I don't believe, a priori, I mean, me and Tamachas Reishi, but a priori, the Rambam, I don't think supports what the Chinuch says. And not clear the Rambam is like the Chinuch. So once you're ready to accept this point, not like the Chinuch, you see, we had, for example, by Shabbos, we had an Aseh and a Lois Aseh, which is the mirror image of each other. The Aseh is to do X, to be Shevis and Malacha, and the Asara is to do Malacha, is not to do Malacha. We had by Yom Tif, we had by Yom Kippur, we had by Shvius. L'cheira, that's what Shurish Shishi is about. At least one of the three cases. But l'cheira, according to this, if you accept this, it's nothing to do with Shurish Shishi, because the Ashora is a midah sheino nechina, midah is chseros, and it's geneva and a lav of kiyum and mechira with it, and the aseh is something else. The aseh is sadek, and maybe the tzaddik could be with mechirasam, and the and yiyeh, I would say, is bikumam, okay, but the Rambam doesn't go like that. The Rambam's mashma that he says the lashon is, again, mitzvah say letzadik amoznayim mishkola is lamidas ul. Excuse me. Mitzvah say letzadik amoznayim mishkola is midas yofa yofa uledaktik b'shcheshbon l'shas asiyosem. So maybe letzadik, according to the Rambam, might not be kiyum, but maybe the mechira. And asiyosem is what he talks about at the end. The question is, what's the tzaddik? The tzaddik is in the kiyumum or in the mechirasam? It doesn't say, but he does say that there's a tzaddik b'asiyasam. Next, we have tzaddik going. See, 1 second. Here. V'isa on Perek Vov, which is the Perek of dealing with your fellow Jew. Perek Hashishi mitzvah iskais shebein odem lechaveiroi vehein 10 mitzvahs. Maybe it's even with a guy. Okay, we'll have to see. No, what he's saying exactly. Here he says like this: V'isa l'ramois memedida shetach ubishkila ubemidas nefach. It's area, weight, volume. B'chol ofnei haramoyes shebahem. It's to act in a in underhanded, sleazy fashion. Behem shloshet tnoim amu leisasu over b'mishpat, b'mida, b'mishko, u'b'mesur. Then vatzivui al dir kamoznaim v'avnei hamishko v'shar advoim hamishamshin lebiru hatzedek. So he doesn't say biur tzedek is not that tzedek is not a verb. It's to mevare moizei tzedek that you can be matzik with. Okay. Oimi moizei tzedek avnei tzedek v'hifin tzedek. Now, if you recall, Rav Haigain in his Chasimus HaSefer says that a mitzvah say and a lois say a hainu hach, he does not count them in minyan mitzvahs. Therefore, he doesn't count the lav of tumeya with an aseh because it's all the same. So the fact that Rav Hai Goin counts both of these, Rav Sadi Goin counts both of these, I can imagine that he's like the Rambam, that one is a problem of Ramos, Geneva. The purpose is to steal in a underhanded fashion. And the second is a tzivui of diuk b'maznayim, to be tachlis hadiuk, as the Rambam had it. Now, next. Ram continues. Ukva yodato sho'efo is midas hayovesh. It's a dry weight or volume. Okay, midas. Excuse me. It's a volume of dry volume. Vahin midas halach. And he says, see, I assume what's happening, it's a double portion that Moznei Tzedek and Avnei Tzedek, that the Moznaim, that which you, the scale and the weights, we understand what they mean. Okay? But Eif and Hin, you might not know what it is. No, I'm telling you that these are Midas HaYovesh and Midas Halach. The Eila Kulam is referring to the Avonim and the Moznayim and the other Midas, the Midas Yovesh, Midas Halach. The Eila Kulam Inyanam Echod. So what does the Rambam want? The Eilu Kulam Inyan Echad. We remember that the concept of Inyan Echad is that the Rambam counts mitzvahs as Inyanei Torah. So l'chera, a priori, just looking at the words that had the Midas HaYovesh and the Midas Halach, or the Mishkolos and or the Miznayim had been different in Yonim, they would have been different mitzvahs. Okay. Now, comes the chinuch. This one, let's just go through it. Comes the chinuch in Mitzvah Zayin. And he says, Zeh shamalti sheramban zichaynu levocho yimne kol hanifrotim bishmom echod echod. If you have one verb and many things singled out in the sentence, each one is separate mitzvahs. Like al toichel imenu no umuvushu amayim. He has a lot of no, and lav mevushal. Comes the chinuch and says, Dafka k'shehem chalukim be'inyan k'mo shekasavnu, that no or mevushal are two separate inyanim. K'goin so dvash, and esna no mechir. Avo b'mokim she'inyan echod, afa pi shenifrotim b'shemois chalukim, lo nimne ze ki im mitzvah achas. K'goin. What are the examples? You don't have a separate mitzvah of boko and sign. Shein ze el tzavo achas lahaktish kol b'chol v'aprat eino el abir v'chein v'chol ma'ase boko v'tzayin shein ze el tzavo achas lahafrish v'oseis ma'ase behemos v'chein shoiftim v'shoitim titel l'cho shein ze el shenase din al pi anoshim eila, that the din should be v'tzavo achasi through shoiftim and shoitrim. And then he says v'chein moisnei tzedek, avnei tzedek, eifat tzedek, v'hin tzedek. Shakol tzavo achas shel neshaker hamidos. So the truth is, we pointed out that the Rambam agrees with the Ramban, but the disagreement is only about lavim. But in Aseh, you can have one verb going on many different pratim, and it can be many different mitzvahs. We are tazev going on peya, leket, peret, noilois. He was ready to say in Shiur Aleph, had it not a Shiur Aleph, then Ludav would have been 4 mitzvahs. Even the Torah says only once, so lekach them. Okay. Now I have one question to ask. I'm just very confused. You see, you could have done this in 2 ways. You could have done it and said, Eif Avnei Tzedek Moznei Tzedek, Avnei Tzedek, Eifa Tzedek, V'hin Tzedek, Yiyeh Lochem. So I would have said Yiyeh goes on each one individually, on the Moznei Tzedek, on the Avnei Tzedek, and the Eifa Tzedek, and the Hin. And the Chiddush is, since all of them are Inyan Echod, therefore it's Mitzvah Achas. However, since we're basically saying the Ram learns that it's Sadek, Moznei Tzedek Sadek, because of the Sefer, Avnei Tzedek Sadek, Eifa Tzedek Sadek, V'hin Tzedek Sadek. So it's very different then. You see, I'm not sure if the Chinuch is learning that it's Yiyeh, being was a quote Yiyeh, but it's 3 separate sivuyim which are Inyan Echod. So therefore, it's 1 mitzvah. So the question how this works. So this idea whether the tzaddik is an adjective or a verb, or it's just a it's if it's adjective or verb, depending upon how you're going to play this out, that it's all 1 mitzvah. But the Ram's clear that he agrees that there's the klal of Inyan Echod applies here. Had they had not been Inyan Echod, they would have 3 mitzvahs. The question is, because there are 3 verbs, or it's really one verb, but it's all in echad. So that you hear the issue. Continues the Rambam. V'im nishtanu mine hashiurim is a very difficult sentence to read. The way Ibn Tibbon has it. The Ibn Tibbon has like this. V'im nishtanu mine hashiurim ki zeh hadov v'shiyishkol o yomoid omnon hu shir erech min ha'marochim is very difficult to read. Kapach, I can read. Af al pi shenishtanu media medina lefi shadov hazeh hanishkol is explaining that he's explaining why it's in echad. Even though there are different types of meters, lefi shadov hazeh hanishkol or anibdon enu elo shir kamusoy or yichuso misuyam. It's a ratio or it's a certain meter, but they're not all the same. Some are volume, some of this, and some of that. Even though the sugim sheinim, but they're all in echad, and that's what Kapach L'Chayr is trying to say. And that's what's going on over here. And the Ram is explaining why they're in echad. V'eila kula in echad. Because it's only shinu hayachas of the shiurim or different types of shiurim. And he continues, v'elu haminim kulam v'taloima peles hapeles v'oznayim b'shiur hayov b'shiur halach. Again, the Kapach leaves out the peles. Yiko midos. So I assume this is another proof that they in echad because they're all called midos. Now it continues. And this is until here, I think we're okay. There are two main issues here. One is that the lav and the aseh are choluk, and there's a din of tzimtzum in asiyas amidos, or in kiyum, or maybe it's in mechira. We have to know. And there's a lav, which is emes lav v'gnei of amois. And a kiyum of these midas are amois. And then he has a separate discussion to tell us why it's mitzvah achas, because it's in echad, and it's not many mitzvahs. Until this point, it's okay. Vatzivui. You see, here, the next line is almost like a monkey wrench. Vatzivui shnitztavu lahaflik b'tzimtzum or lahakbid b'diukam b'tzimtzum ashir hamuskam olov. It's the convention. It's a very important thing. The Torah is not, like in blindfolds. If there's a convention of people, the way you sell, one has to keep that convention. Hashir hamuskam olov mikol min mehem yikomid mitzvas midus. See here, he doesn't go out of the question. Is he says to himself, or maybe everything in the beginning is la badafka? The mitzvah is the tzimtzum. He doesn't say that there's the tzaddik and there's lahaflik, but the mitzvah is lahaflik with simsuma, and maybe that's what tzaddik is. And you could do like that. Then the vav over here is, like we said, that in Arabic there's a vav of shet to explain, and the tzedek is the shin order. That the tzaddik should be in order, that there should be b'diuk with simsumam. But then it's not like Mishnah Torah. This sentence over here has to be thought about, and maybe you should read it that the ulahaflig is in order. And then the Protei Mitzvos and the Minyan HaKotzin here are all the same. It's a Mishnah Torah that he seems to add Mitzvah say letzadik amoznayim mishkolos uledaktek b'cheshboinon b'shas hasiyos, unless you tell me over here also that the Rambam is using an Arabic type of phrase in writing the Hebrew and the Arabic. Uledaktek is kedei ledaktek b'cheshboinon b'shas hasiyos, and maybe there are no two things going on. Okay, I'm just telling you, this line over here is like a monkey wrench, because it's very clear. From this line, it's only one thing, unless he was not medactic. Now, the Rab ends off with a whole new thing. A sifra. Loshin sifra al tnai kach hoitzeisi eschem me'eretz Mitzrayim al tnai shetekablu aleichem mitzvas midos. So l'cheira, he has a raya here that there is a mitzvah min haminyan, and maybe it's one mitzvas midos. And maybe I don't know if he's medayik like that. Shekol hamoide b'mitzvas midos, moide b'yitzias Mitzrayim, v'chol hakeife b'mitzvas midos, keife b'yitzias Mitzrayim. So this next line is a very, it's very interesting of what Yitzias Mitzrayim is mechayim, and but it's it's nothing to do with over here, because it's not telling you. It just mentioned again and again that there's a mitzvah. But the important line is mitzvahs midos and mitzvahs midos and mitzvahs midos, just 3 times mentioned. But the kaifer and the moide are completely irrelevant to what we're talking about here. Just, I'd like to point out to you, the Rambam uses this Amanas Kain Hoitzeisi Mi Mitzrayim 3 times in Minyan HaMitzvos, all by Mitzvah. And here it's a little different. He uses it in Mitzvah Beis by Mitzvah Yichud. Mitzvah Tes, the mitzvah Kiddush Hashem, and here in the mitzvah of Tzedek Amidos. But the difference is over here, it says explicitly that there's a mitzvah. In mitzvah of Yichud and the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, all the Ram says is Amanas Kain Hotzei Mi Mitzrayim. And it doesn't say in the memory of Chazal that the mitzvah of Yichud or the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. But the assumption that the Rambam has is that Yitzias Mitzrayim, by definition, or that we are avodim to our Kodesh Baruch Hu, that the Yitzias Mitzrayim, Hamenash Kein Hoitzeisi, must be a mitzvah, and therefore he proves that the mitzvah of Yichud and Kiddush Hashem, just from the fact that Hamenash Kein Hoitzeisi Mitzrayim, here the proof is very simple because Chazal themselves say mitzvahs midas. And I pointed out to you, we're not sure here whether he's trying to prove that it's one mitzvah or just that it is a mitzvah. Now, let's introduce the next mitzvah. Mitzvah Reish Tes. Va mitzvah hateshe umosayim. Hishizivonu lekhabed achachomim veloku mipneim ulegadel oisam. The first question you have to ask, there are three things, two things. What exactly is going on over here? How many things are there? The next question you're going to have to ask yourself, V'omo yis'aleh b'nei seva toku v'odata p'nei zokim. So you could have interpreted that basically there are two things here. There's an inyan of kimo and inyan of hidur. But the Ram says that's not the way to interpret this. Because the Ram says, Rosh Sefer, Tokum, I don't know where the Sefer is. There's a Gemara in Kiddushin, very similar. Tokum v'hodarto. Kimo sheyesh bo hidur. It's not two separate things, but the two verbs merged together are kimo sheyesh bo hidur. So in a priori, there can't be many things going on because there's really only one thing going on. Because the mitzvah is kimo sheyesh bo hidur. Then the Ram goes on and does amazing things. V'da, she'im heyois mitzvah zo mechuyeves or chayeves la'anoshim kulam b'chlal. Everyone's mechuyev. Kloima lekabed hachachomim v'afilu chochom lechochom mashov alei b'chochom. Comes the Ram, throws in something which is absolutely amazing, that two chachomim are the exact same caliber. The mitzvah is each one shemechabed his friend. There's no mitzvah to mechabed someone who's less than you, but someone who was on the same level, you have to mechabed him. And that's a mitzvah deraisa. Kamo shebeiru be'omrom, talmidei chachomim shebebovel oimdim ze mipnei ze. So deraisa din. There's a challenge over here. Do the Rishonim in Bava Metzia interpret it like this? What is the relationship between the mitzvah of ki oimdin zeh mipnei zeh to the continuation of the Maimah Chazal, if I'm not mistaken, of Keirin zeh al zeh? And does the Rambam Mishnah Torah maintain what he says here, or he's chayzer by? Then the Rambam goes on. That's point one. Point two is a new discussion. Da sheyesh bekibud dvor miyuchodim v'noisaf ma'al Talmud. This mitzvah of kavod chachamim zeh, there's separate obligations on the student. V'zeh ki kibud atalmid leraboi yesh boi tesefes gedula ala kavod shu chayiv lekol chacham. But it's not a separate mitzvah. It's part of this mitzvah. V'ischayiv loi im hakavod hameira. So here, there's not only kavod, but there's also meira. Sheheim kvar biro shechok rabbi olav yois godol mechok aviv. That the rabbi is greater than aviv, and in aviv v'imai there's kavod umeira. Shechivu hakosuv lechabdoi v'liro mimenoi, because there's kavod umeira, but there it's two separate mitzvahs, and the question is, what is the relationship? Here l'chayr is going into one mitzvah, and then he says ubebeya omroi avi v'rabbi rabbi kaidem. So l'chayr a priori, this is only an issue of kedima, and the Rambam is proving from this that there's a mitzvah of kavod and meira from rabbi, or something like that. Then the Rambam goes on, and a whole new discussion. Before we were talking about the relationship between rabbi and aviv ve'eim, kilu, that's kavod and meira. Now we're moving into a new area, which is almost like Shechina and Meira Shechina. Ukfar biro she'eino muter leTalmud lachlek al rabbi. Goitzeloima b'chilek lotzeis me'orosai v'dino she'yismach b'sfarosai v'yilma o yoden o yere im lo yitin lo rishus. This is very difficult to read. I would suggest the reading of Kapach. He says, Kavanosi b'machlekes she'yetze mushusai. He's not under his jurisdiction of the law, of his rabbi. B'machlekes she'yetze mushusai. V'yipoed b'svarasa v'yolamid o yerubli she'aseh. Without rishus, he says, Ich bin an eigener Mensch. I can be a meira. V'ein muter loy liskaitet imoi oy lisroy mimeno o l'chshadoi. This shaharacher, and then he says ki efshet lo yitzeh. That he says chelik amu kol chelik al rabbi chelik al shechina shemo yitzach l'Hashem chol oisem riva im rabbi. So this is shechina, and this he says, and he continues, and he says because more rabcha. Okay, so this goes back again to Sherish Beis, where the Rambam is the Bagas Hashem Elokei. So what is this? This is Mor Shamayim. Is it not Mor Shamayim? Is it Mor Aveim? Is it part of the Mitzvah of Kibud Chachamim? There's so many things going on over here. And then he does an amazing thing, and he talks about Machlekes Korach. Is the Machlekes Korach being chilik Moshe Rabbeinu Rabban Shel Yisrael? Because he says, Omnom hoye im Moshe v'olav hoye Rabban Shel Yisrael, Kol Yisrael. So, and then he says, Zekula lo kuach baraya meyois hakosuv mitzvah lechaber es hachomim v'ho'ovis. What does he want with that? That's the next mitzvah. Kmo she'izboye b'lishonis rabim v'atalmud. Lo shehi mitzvah b'fnei atzma. He's explaining it's not a separate mitzvah. Mitzvah Shem will pick this up next week.